This is Jed Disler, and welcome to The Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. And we are continuing our journey through numerous recorded cycles of the Chopin Mazurkas. We're keeping to pianists who recorded either the standard 51 Mazurkas or pianists who recorded all of the mazurkas, which include posthumously published pieces, most of which date from Chopin's childhood. I just realized that I didn't talk about the mazurka genre in the last episode, so I thought it might be helpful for listeners who are just getting into this repertoire. To paraphrase a popular 1960s cigarette television advertisement, you can take Chopin out of Poland, but you can't take Poland out of Chopin. Although Chopin left Warsaw for good when he was 21 years old to settle in Paris, Polish melodies and dances always remained central to Chopin's musical DNA. In fact, the mazurkas outnumber Chopin's works in all other genres, and he wrote mazurkas from his early childhood up to his final illness. In Chopin's mazurkas, the basic rhythm and phrase scansions embrace traditional Polish dance forms, such as the mazur, the oberek, and the kujawiak, while at the same time they give free rein to this composer's extraordinary harmonic gifts. And in every period of Chopin's brief life, his mazurka writing consistently altered between works that were either simple or complex, or charming on the surface, but also quite audacious on the surface. And if you were to put all of the mazurkas in your music playback device, and if you pushed the random play button, you never know what you would get as far as mood or style. The analogy is like sampling assorted chocolates. You know, they all look the same, but once you take a bite, you never know if you're going to get smooth milk chocolate or pepper-infused chocolate or marzipan or nuts. You know what I mean. We left off the last episode talking about Alexander Brylowski's Chopin Mazurkas. Here's another Polish pianist from a much younger generation, obviously, the pianist Ewa Pobłocka. And her cycle was recorded in the studios of Polish radio in 1999. And it was released on a label called Bearton or Bearton, Bearton. That's the name of the label. And good luck trying to find this cycle. It's kind of impossible to source. But I wanted to mention it because it's a terrific cycle. And what I love about Ewa Pobłocka's playing is that in the introspective mazurkas, she digs really deep and she takes her time to savor details. But in the more upbeat, extroverted pieces, she tends to go for broke, and she goes for dynamic extremes, but not in an exaggerated way. And she always plays with affirmation. So if you happen to find these recordings, grab them wherever you can find them. And of similar temperament, but a little more old school and equally wonderful, is the Mazurka cycle recorded in 1989, I believe, by Halina Czerny-Stefanska. She was a terrific pianist, and she shared first prize with Bela Dawidowicz in the 1949 Warsaw International Chopin competition. Czerny-Stefanska had recorded mazurkas for various labels, but her 1989 cycle for the Japanese Canyon label is definitely worth checking out. Also, a deep-thinking and serious and thoroughly idiomatic Chopin mazurka player was the late Tatiana Shepanova. Now, she recorded only the mazurkas that bear opus numbers, including opus 67 and 68. And she recorded all of these back in 2008. And these were part of a box set on the Dux label, the Polish Dux label, which was called The Complete Solo Works of Chopin in Opus Order. And then she recorded another Chopin cycle, but this time on a period instrument. These recordings were made between 2007 and 2010. And on this 14-disc set, the first 12 discs follow a more or less chronological order of Chopin's output. So you get the Opus 67 and Opus 68 works, plus a few other early selections. But the Opus 67 and 68 pieces are not grouped together because, remember, we're dealing with musical chronology. But clearly, Tatiana Shabanova was equally comfortable on both a period instrument and a modern concert grand. And these are just marvelous recordings. Now we get to one of the most eccentric Chopin Mazurka cycles ever issued. And this features pianist Russell Sherman. This was issued on the Avi label. His interpretations are usually impossibly fussy and overloaded, and I don't feel that he plays the music so much as he plays at the music, with a lack of simplicity that yields choppy, discontinuous, and occasionally undisciplined results. I often find that his playing is pockmarked by skewed relationships between melodies and accompaniments, or exaggerated articulations that distort rhythms when they should be straightforward. I often liken Russell Sherman's mazurka playing to a comedian who knows more jokes than anyone else, yet he has absolutely no sense of comic timing whatsoever. But sometimes Russell Sherman holds your attention, even though he plays as if he's totally distracted by trivia. Now, another pianist who likes to micromanage details and probe in between the lines, or some may feel that he obliterates the lines, is Alessandro Deljavan. And I criticized his Chopin etudes for being overdone and overripe, and indeed, his complete mazurka cycle almost overdoses on rubato, and he comes up with more inner voices than Joseph Hoffman ever served up in his lifetime, and they're constant changes of color. But I find that his affettuoso style is not so overdone, certainly in comparison to Russell Sherman. And I can give you one example. In the E minor Mazurka, Opus 17, number 2, not one phrase in the opening section transpires in the same tempo, yet there's always an unexpected yet ultimately inevitable sounding accent or nuance that grabs your attention. And when I reviewed Alessandro Deljavan's Mazurka cycle, I said that if you played these recordings but added some 78 RPM surface scratch, you might play it for a collector obsessed with dead pianists, and the collector would say, oh my God, maybe this is an unpublished Ignaz Friedman or Moritz Rosenthal recording, but it's Alessandro Deljavan. Now, at the opposite end of this pianist is Ronald Smith, the British pianist and scholar who made numerous recordings, and he probably was most celebrated for being a big advocate for the music of Alkan. Ronald Smith recorded a Chopin Mazurka cycle for EMI in 1975. It's an interesting but really uneven cycle. He's great when he comes to keeping contrapuntal textures clear and well delineated, but I think he just basically lacks a feeling for the quintessential mazurka rhythm, and his emphatic phrasing and punchy accents often lurch against the music's melodic logic. It's kind of like a singer who breathes in all the wrong places while mispronouncing many words. I think Ronald Smith just fidgets too much, and he rarely gets out of his own way. Similar to Russell Sherman, but let's say basically Russell Sherman is diarrhea to Ronald Smith's constipation. How's that for an analogy, folks? Perish the thought. But there is a British pianist who really gets the mazurka idiom, and she has something to say in each and every work, and usually very convincingly so. And that's Joanna McGregor. Sometimes she can be a little dry or rhythmically twitchy, as if she feels that she has to be compelled to do something all the time. But her genuine involvement with the music and her genuine sense of inquiry comes across. These recordings have grown on me over the years, and you can find them as downloads or on streaming platforms. The physical discs are not easy to find. Nor are the physical discs easy to source for a Mazurka cycle issued by Harmonia Mundi with the pianist Friedrich Chu. But you can find this cycle of Friedrich Chu to download, and you can stream it also. And actually, if you look on archive.org, someone posted MP3 files of the whole cycle for free, so grab these while you can. When I first heard this cycle and reviewed it, I found Friedrich Chu's interpretations somewhat underplayed at times and often lacking in scintillation. But I've come to understand that Friedrich Chu is genuinely realizing his conceptions and intentions to a very refined degree, and that he does what he does because he specifically wants it so. And I've come to like this cycle more and more. It's grown a lot on me over the decades, and perhaps I was just rushing to judgment when I reviewed this 20-odd years ago. That happens sometimes, but give it a listen. However, I'm going to close out this episode by recommending a truly intriguing and stimulating mazurka cycle. This one is on the Ondine label with the pianist Peter Jablonski. Now, maybe I'm prejudiced because Peter is a good friend and we have performed together 4 hands. But he brings a fresh spin to many of these pieces without ever exaggerating or being different for difference's sake. For example, listen to his F minor, Opus 7, number 3 interpretation. He brings these startling hesitations and dynamic surges that illuminate the music's agitated character. And in that little C major, Opus 24, number 2 mazurka, he holds back in the outer sections in order to create a real sense of surprise in the trio. I never would have thought of that kind of conception for this piece myself. And in the nocturne-like C minor, Opus 56, number 3 mazurka, well, here Peter stares the music's dark corners right in the eye, and there are so many surprises and delights throughout his cycle. And his playing really gives you pleasure, but it also makes you think. Also, the engineering is just gorgeous, but that's typical for Ondine. You expect nothing but the best sound in the world from this fantastic label. We will continue on in our next episode with more Chopin Mazurka Cycles, and I'm also going to talk about collections of selected mazurkas that belong in every Piano Maven's library. And by the end of the episode, you will learn my top choice for a Mazurka cycle, my however choice. Some of you may already have guessed what it might be based on the recommendation that I made in my friend Ben Laudy's Chopin podcast. But tune in next time because we have a lot of mazurking left to do. This is Jed Disler, and you've been listening to The Piano Maven, your friendly podcast guide to piano recordings. Take good care, and I look forward to being with you next time.